What you'd think would be a really simple thing was this captive nut end up being one of the most annoying things. So I have a problem here. I've got, usually behind here there's a captive nut and it's long since rusted away, and there's no way of getting my welder behind there to weld a new captive nut on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill this out a little bit bigger so that I can see this nut through the hole, and then I'm going to tack weld it on, and then I'll just probably tap it out to make sure that it's nice and clean, and hopefully then my nut will be captive just by welding on the very edge of the nut where it meets the panel. Okay, it's such an annoying little nut because really it's just to hold this piece of trim that goes over it, but it's working on the other side, and if I don't do this, there's no way I can screw something into it and it will look silly, and it's just a little bit of detail that I might as well fix now. So I've drilled out this hole around the outside a bit bigger so I've got access to the nut, and hopefully I'll be able to tack weld there, and that should be enough to hold it in place. What you'd think would be a really simple thing was this captive nut end up being one of the most annoying things. In the end, I ended up widening the hole, and so I could see the nut all the way around, and then tacked it all, and then ground it off, and then ran a screw through it, and it's nice and clean. I tried to use my tap just to clean it up, but I couldn't get the tap in there to get started, and I was worried that I was going to strip the thread with the tap, which can happen really easily. So now it's welded in there and it's all good, and I've got my position. Thank God.
So because the nuts are so difficult to get to on the rear valance, I'm going to tack them in place so they can't come off. So I've just temporarily tightened them up, and I'm just going to put a spot either side.
Another one of the irritating things I've had to do is years ago I tried to get one of the bolts out here from the rear subframe, and it stripped and I couldn't get it out because I didn't have access to the panel here, to the inside captive nut. I just screwed it back in as tightly as I could and made sure the top one was nice and tight, and that's how it's been for years. So it's always been playing on my mind that as soon as I would get access to it, I'd fix it up. The problem is that this screw, you can see maybe in here, screws in there get really badly affected by rust, and there's no drainage, so they get rusty as crazy. The bottom one was the worst. So the top one's usually pretty good because it's not in any sitting water. But what I ended up doing, because they're UNF nuts, UNF bolts, I pulled it out, and I had to actually leave a screwdriver on the inside against the end of the bolt so that it could help it out through the stripped nut, through the stripped nut. And then I simply tapped it out with an M8 tap, which was just the right size actually, and sort of tricky to get to, but I held it against there and stripped and put a new thread on it, and then just used one of these Allen key high tensile bolts, which worked perfectly and allowed me to get it nice and tight. So the bottom one is an Allen key but you know, it's nice and tight and shouldn't be a problem. If I need to at some stage, I can do the top one and I'll still have access to it. And then in there what I'll do is I'll put a small hole down in the corner, which is supposed to be a vent hole, I think anyway. And I'll just make sure that there's a hole in there so that it can drain out, so it doesn't get rusty. I just coated it in oil before I screwed it in. So there you go, another annoying job done. I did the same on the other side as well.